This has to be one of my favourite places in Edinburgh, particularly during the Edinburgh Fringe. It's Greyfriars Kirk, or church. It's a churchyard in the middle of the city. It's quite near the very centre, just off Chambers Street. You can find it near the Museum of Scotland. It's a beautiful church. It's got a little statue of Greyfriars Bobby. You can see that. He's the legendary dog that stayed by his master even when he died, and it's appropriate. It's a very heartwarming, sad story, and it's appropriate that there is a little statue there. It's also a place where there are things like tombstones up against people's houses, and I've had many a conversation over the years about who would live in that house, and it seems to split the human race even if they're not particularly religious. Some would say I'd feel assured having it there, and others would feel freaked out. But when I sit here, lots of other people are coming here for the calm, and even when there are a lot of tourists, there's often a sort of reverence for these sorts of places. So it's a place to come and do a bit of writing, a bit of reflecting. And I want to encourage you during the busy Edinburgh Fringe is to put a value on reflection. And partly as an academic, we often teach a model that's been around for a long time by a guy called David Kolb, K-O-L-B, and it's the learning cycle model, and it's very simple, and I could draw it for you, but I love talking it through too. It's a little cycle that basically says we're always having experiences, and a good thing to do with significant ones, whether particularly if they're going right or whether they're going wrong, is to reflect on them. Just take a bit of time out. In Edinburgh, that can involve coming to Greyfriars Kirk, one of the quieter places. Go sit on the meadows in Edinburgh, find a park bench and just look back at what happened. And I'd say in Edinburgh, particularly if it's something that didn't go as you planned, and just ask some questions like why did it happen and what might I have done differently, and not to make it a taboo to look at the difficult stuff. We should have allowed more time for that. I didn't listen properly. They can be reflections as a group, as a cast, as a production team, as a marketing team. They can be individual personal reflections, and it's not about beating yourself up. You can ask questions like, what could I have done more of, less of? What should I start doing, stop doing? You just look back on what happened and try and draw out the lessons. And it's reflection because it's kind of like looking into a mirror and getting some images back. And sometimes the reflection's accurate, sometimes it's distorted, but the process of just looking back sometimes can help you draw out insight into what you might do differently. So we reflect, and out of that we develop new kind of ideas and new theories, kind of experiments of, why don't I try this? Why don't I fly somewhere else? Why don't I get up a bit earlier and see if I can catch a different crowd? What happens if we get back into the rehearsal room and get that scene better? What if we could pace it better? Why did we get that review? Are there any insights in there? Rather than being completely angry, is there actually some lessons that we might take from it? So reflections can be positive or negative. They can make you feel reassured because you've finally drawn out the insight. They could just leave more questions, but then you go into this place of experimentation, of coming up with new ideas, new thoughts about what we might do. So having come up with the new ideas, you put them into practice and you try them out, and then of course you'll have an experience, and what you might do is reflect on that, and we go round the learning cycle. So the learning cycle is kind of concrete experience, reflection, developing new theories, new ideas, which we then experiment with in action, and that leads to experiences we can reflect on. And busy worlds, like the worlds of business quite often, and people who are very sort of manically busy, tend to stay in action, and they don't take time to reflect, which means, according to Kolb, they don't learn, because it's a cycle of learning, and we need to put value on time out to reflect, which creates the new theories, the new ideas that we can then try out and experiment, have the experience and go round. And that's kind of the cycle of learning, and I think it's really helpful in the Edinburgh Fringe to, maybe you want to look that up on Google. The same diagram often comes, and you can just go through the 4 stages. There are lots of different models of reflection. I quite like Kolb, and I use it myself. And so here at the Edinburgh Fringe, taking that time out to reflect, I think, is key, because it can be that you might get a rogue review early in your show, and you get a bit transfixed by it, but actually whether you take that review into account or not, whether you completely disagree with it, just sit down somewhere and go through that learning cycle. And it may well be that there's a gem in there saying this came in too long, that actually it was badly lit because you're in a venue that you didn't really have much of a tech get-in time, and it's not the same show that you brought here. There could be other bits around it. So learning will help you improve, and sometimes you really need to approve that the show at the beginning may not be the same show at the end. And if you learn, you may well find that another review comes in that completely changes your fringe. As, I don't know, they do use stars here a lot, but 2 stars gets wiped out by a brilliant 4-star review elsewhere. What I notice, and I often sit down with people and say, how are you? And we get different answers, is that people get stuck in unchange. Particularly if they get angry with reviews, or the cast goes into a sort of meltdown where people get very defensive, or you get defensive with yourself and you cling on to the past. And the past could just be yesterday, or what you brought with as a bunch of expectations, and you're damned if you're not going to meet them. But actually, flexibility and the ability to learn and change is key to the Edinburgh Fringe, particularly if you're doing a longer run, or particularly if you've got an onward journey to other fringes, or you're looking to get your show booked. You have to be up for change. There's quite a lot of research out there that people think they're up for change more than they actually are in practice, and so they kind of have a flexibility in their head that doesn't quite move their feet. Sometimes feedback is given in Edinburgh because we're oversensitive in ways that can feel harsh, so just be careful that you're not being constructive enough. You may need to get your feedback to your friends off, but actually people are oversensitive, and you might have to be very evidence-based. So if you're helping someone reflect on something that didn't work, I use the expression, just because it's about you doesn't mean it's personal. Take the feedback, don't take the insult. People are not usually trying to insult or attack you. Trust is really key. I think everybody should come up here with a sense of who they can trust, and if you're up here on your own with a solo show, there are support groups. Fringe Central is a really good place to hang out. There are workshops, there are places to meet up. We run a workshop halfway through the Fringe called Turning Around Disaster, where there's a real opportunity to practice that learning cycle. But sitting here, I haven't met you, but I wish everybody well, because it's tough to be up here at the Edinburgh Fringe. But you'll get more success if you learn, and you'll get more learning if you take time out to reflect. And I love to do that here in Canongate Kirk, and I'm never on my own because we got that loyal little dog surrounded by flowers. Have a great Fringe.